Absolutely. I think, I mean, books have, retained relevance, across generations. So, and with Printed Matter, we're a 50-year now organization, specializing in artist books. And, one of the phrases that kind of, I think, best describes uh, kind of the interaction that people have with publications here is by Lawrence Weiner, which is to figure out ways to learn to read art. So, our books are oftentimes like exclusively visual in format, but there's lots of text that can be deployed in different instances and, give readers, viewers, kind of appreciators of art and books, perfect vehicles for understanding like that kind of language. I think I mean, it's certainly subjective based on, every person that's like encountering a book. And one of the motives behind artist books was for people to have like multiple experiences, different experiences with publications as they sort of migrate throughout the world. Um, and, you know, many of our publications are, open to interpretation. I would say, depending on the kind of like avenue of expression, things that are maybe more political or like activist related certainly have like a really distinct and explicit implications, and others are using metaphor and symbology and stuff like that to like tell stories, and other times it's very like oblique and kind of imposes like all sorts of different potentials for narrative on the viewer. Printed Matter was founded in 1976 by a collective of artists, art workers, writers, critics, most notably Lucy Lippard, Saul LeWitt, Walter Robinson, Pat Steer, Ed Diak, among others, as a idea to create a venue to sell artist books. Artist books had come into sort of practice starting in like the mid '60s, maybe earlier, and they often defied categorization for mainstream bookstores. So there really needed to be a place that focused on that kind of expression. Original stores in Chelsea, then various iterations of it across Manhattan. So we've kind of moved where like art galleries have moved in the city from Tribeca, excuse me, started in Tribeca, and then from Tribeca to Soho, and then to 10th Avenue in Chelsea, and then here on 11th Avenue since 2015. And so, we quickly established a not-for-profit status in the second era of existence, and that allowed us to fundraise and create different ways to kind of find ways to keep our mission alive through the sort of education and distribution of artist books. And so, whether through the store or through our art book fairs, programming, workshops, events, all those ways are how we sort of like continue to sort of preach the relevance of the art form. The mission of Printed Matter is to celebrate artist books, the understanding and appreciation and distribution, meaning the sales of artist books. We are a not for profit, but our store and book and artist book sales provide a significant portion of our operating budget each year. So we want to make that distinction between books about art and artist books. And certainly like zines are a huge part of our ecosystem now. So how they, kind of fill out this whole world. Every, year, season, semester, art book fair, people are being introduced to these things, and they can be, like confusing and, chaotic and, colorful and important and weighty, and like, run the gamut of like all sorts of experiences in book form. So, I think I'm rambling a little bit, but like our intention is to showcase, the widest and best kind of like variety of artist books from across the world, both here in the store, through our programming, through our book fairs, and what we offer. I, I'll use like reading for us can mean a lot of different things. Especially because like, again, we have like a lot of sort of non-text based work, from photography, illustration, collage, abstract poetry, concrete poetry, that kind of stuff. Um, I mean, there's certainly and always is like a lot of writing around art. There's certainly a lot of people that deploy like poetry in their art, especially as it like will complement or sort of reflect on like images in the work. Um, yeah, I mean, I think reading in general, probably the biggest thing in the last 10 years is attention spans. So, I mean, everything is competing for, attention, these days from streaming to analog like media to podcasts to live events to whatever, so, and of course like social media and the internet. So, we're oftentimes seen as like an antidote to like screen-based culture. Um, I think probably the biggest thing that I think of, or continues this cycle of like, oh, the book is dying or the bookstore is dying or something like that. It's like, it's kind of like it's been in this like cycle for many iterations and with various enemies, from the big box stores in the 90s to what was the next one? The next one would be like the internet, then the next thing would be like social media, and Amazon, all these different sort of boogeymen, have kind of imposed themselves on like the independent bookstore across the board, not just like an artist bookstore or specialty store, but like bookstores in general. But they continue to flourish. I think one of the um, positive outcomes of like lockdown and COVID is that there was a lot of commercial space that opened up, and a lot of like young people, entrepreneurs, book people that have opened like incredible stores since then. So you see like this broad mix of bookstores across the world, and also like art book fairs and zine fairs across the world, that realize like that's the best way to connect with people now directly, versus having to go through different channels. So like the yeah, the consumership of of books uh, remains quite high, but it's always something that's like we're always constantly competing uh, for eyeballs and attention. But I think the more that we showcase sort of like the variety and depth of the work, and the sort of like originality and invention of design and things like that, um, yeah, people will find it compelling.
So book culture opened almost 30 years ago. Yeah, greatly in partnership with kind of faculty on campus, and kind of the desire to make a strong, independent, academically leaning bookstore for this neighborhood, maybe for New York City in general. Um, Over time, uh, a lot of that has shifted to expand beyond just like academic and used books, where we also carry now a lot more like kids and kind of things for the whole family, trying to fill out anything that anybody walking in off the street might need. I think, at least in looking in terms of like book market share, I think larger percentage, though maybe not a but growing sector. Uh, Book sales are made in for like audiobooks and ebooks and things. It's not. There was a time maybe 15 years ago when ebooks were starting to gain popularity, and there were all these articles written about how ebooks are going to be the death of bookstores and death of physical books, and then they kind of hit uh, like a steady portion of it grew the market, didn't really necessarily detract from, and then once it hit it's like 15 or 20%, or kind of depending on the genre and as spectrum, um, that just became an addition without a detraction. So I think and I think with audiobooks too, I think there's been a lot of energy to kind of expand the availability to those uh, in a way that, again, kind of like adds to the book buying industry, or in a way that's kind of encouraging. Yeah, I think again, kind of, as long as there have been bookstores, there have been like newspaper accounts of like the end of the bookstore is coming, and here we are, 800 years later, something still trucking along. I think what we work really hard to do is to be open and adapting. to changes in the industry. Um, and so, I think probably 10 years ago, we didn't really even have like a well-defined young adult versus like middle grade reading section. And as reading tastes have changed and book sales interests have changed, those sections maybe grew more than they used to be here. Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I think it's always sad when a bookstore closes, and or at least maybe it's usually sad when a bookstore closes and uh, isn't able to, I guess, meet the demands of the day. But I think especially in the last 15 years, more and more independent bookstores have opened here in the city and here in the United States, and I think that's heartwarming. And I think it's partially because people, customers, our neighbors really appreciate the work that we do to curate a selection and create a place that can be a community space. And I do believe that those third spaces are harder to find now. And so I think as long as bookstores can continue to serve that niche, it should be around for many years to come. Probably day to day, a lot of people's reading has changed, and that there are so many more sources of reading than you might have over the course of your day, between emails and social media and articles and books and subtitles and all kinds of things. So, but I feel like books are still going to be a part of whatever reading future we have.
My story is, so I've worked with a lot of bookstores throughout my career. The thing about Word Up is I've never seen a bookstore so deep in the community as Word Up. I mean, we're multilingual, we're all kinds of social issues. So for one thing, the store provides a lot of knowledge and guidance legally, socially, politically. And it serves a diverse community. So we have fiction, we have like trade stuff, like a bookstore would, and people come looking for that as well. But it's a real special place because of how we fit in the community. I mean, you look in the front, we have drug tests, we have a community fridge outside, we do events on the sidewalk here. We make a lot of our money doing book fairs, offsite events, things with universities. Wherever there's something, we're sniffing and looking to do something there.
We're very community driven, to making sure we can do what we can to help the community and not just, frankly, take from the community. A lot of businesses, I know this is an unfortunate nature of business, is they find a community that doesn't have what they have and they want to make as much money from the community doing that thing. Whereas we just want to do our best to add to the community without needing to drain the community of its hard-earned resources, right? We do as best of a job as possible. Word Up in particular is focused on new books. We do as best of a job as possible to have as many used books in the store that are discounted, pay-as-you-wish books in the store that are discounted. We take books on consignment written by community members. We take books on consignment that we can hopefully sell at a discount because the book was subsidized through some other thing.
I think also pertaining to the identity is the community within the bookstore that works for the bookstore, that volunteers, is immense. I mean, there are 2.5 paid employees. We're a nonprofit. There are over 80 volunteers cycling through various tasks. There are people who work steady shifts because we need to know somebody's going to show up and we're in the store. And the volunteers do everything. We open and close the store. We handle money. We do everything. And some people have steady shifts. Some people come when they can. Some people fill in. But it really is a group team effort. Everybody does everything. I mean, there's no one task that any of us can't do. In the training, we learn everything about the store. So it's a really wonderful community internally and externally.
Why do people come here?
People come here for both.
Yeah,
I think people,
do come
we have we've said diverse community, but over there at Columbia Prep, We had a lot of people coming from there
Yeah.
who like, wow, there's a bookstore here. And we know that there'll be repeat customers and they have a different taste than somebody else. What we want to do is service everybody. So for people that come up from the hospital, maybe they're not interested in anything politically or socially. Maybe they just want a good book to read. Well, we have those. So it's a real, we benefit from having all that different kind of customer trade. It helps us. It helps us to stock certain books that people want. In my career, I like to tell people that the book must have died 5 times. Video, CD-ROM, digital, ebooks. I can't remember the 5th, but books are still here. And they always will be, regardless of whatever happens. Books are, still at all, with all the digital and all that stuff, books are still a very elegant device. I mean, something nice to hold in your hands. It's very tactile. You wet your finger to turn a page. It's a whole experience. You have a bookmark. So some people like them. The other thing that tells me the book is very much alive is working here. I'm an old guy, right? I retired and I had my career in books, and I come here and all these young people, not only are they passionate and idealistic, but they're readers. Amazingly so. I asked one of the young women, so do you read on your little device? Oh yeah, I do that. What about book? Oh yeah, I read more books than I do on my device. In fact, Stephen, I'm going to read 75 books this year. I hung my head in shame. It's like, and so many of them read. And that's really, really bodes well for the future. You want the business to go on and on. And, but I think the other thing Rodolfo said is about content. By the time I finished my career, it was all about content. And again, we have a lot of content here. It fits a lot of needs. It fits a lot of passions. So again, as far as Word Up goes, the book is not going anywhere.
Yeah.